De basisuitgangspunten voor wijsheid zijn zojuist al weergegeven. Grenzeloosheid,
cyclicity, as well as growth and fundamental equality. That is therefore the foundation to elaborate on if you want to become life-wise. It implies that all life is essentially boundless, that it manifests itself through cyclic movement over and over again, expressing more and more of the boundlessness. In this second lecture, I will discuss what the process of becoming life-wise looks like, where this wisdom can be found, and what the consequences are of being wiser. Before we do this, it is probably useful to repeat the definitions of wisdom and wisdom of life, which Lalibel has just given. Wisdom is the ability to see and experience the true coherence and regularity of all things. Wisdom of life is the dynamic process in which we learn to consistently apply wisdom during all phases and conditions in life. With just a short definition, we can still have different images, hence a little more interpretation. Wisdom is more than just knowledge or having insight. It is not about learning thousands of details and examples of wisdom. It is the building of a universal picture of life. It is the assumption of laws that apply in all circumstances, of being able to interpret the basic assumptions we mentioned earlier, boundlessness, cyclicity, and growth and fundamental equality, and applying them to all questions in life. The word apply in the definition of wisdom of life indicates that it is also practical and moral. So you can only be wise in life if you actually do something with that wisdom, if you live according to it every day. So knowing that it is wiser not to argue about a proper definition of a concept, such as the definition of wisdom, it is insufficient. You have to avoid taking a dogmatic point of view towards a definition you find accurate. You will have to listen to each other patiently in order to understand more and more elements of the concept. This allows you to develop an even increasing wider view as well as an increasing insight into what can be meant by the concept. Wisdom is seeing the bigger picture, gaining insight in life and the coherence of things. It is knowing that you are a learning being and keeping in mind that you are able to learn more and more, infinitely more. Wisdom is knowing that there is more knowledge. You can, for instance, know that the sun comes up every day, but if you don't know that Earth is a sphere in space that revolves around its axis, you have no insight into how day and night are caused. Wisdom is not being overwhelmed by what is happening around you, not to be overwhelmed by emotions, but to control your emotions, to lead your own life, and to direct your thoughts and actions from the vision that you have on life. Wisdom means taking your own responsibility and helping to improve the world wherever you can, matching your abilities.
With acquired insight and wisdom, you can then search together for a sustainable solution for life questions. Life solutions more and more effectively. From the foregoing, it appears that wisdom is thus both about acquired insight and about acting according to it. It is good to add that you do not need a scientific education to be wise. I will now discuss the question of how you can become wiser. To start with the short answer, you can become wiser by gaining insight and continuously develop a broader vision of life, by getting to know the key patterns of life and learning how to apply them in practice. And this is only possible if you're open to it, if you can continue wondering and want to keep learning. This learning process consists of a number of distinct phases: wondering, investigating, consistent application in all life conditions, and the gaining of increased insight, so becoming wiser. The first distinct phase is wondering. In this phase, the main point is that questions arise about something you perceive or think, but you do not yet understand. In Theosophy, we do not mean just any questions such as how is the peanut butter put on my bread today made, or how gets my salary actually on my account. No, it concerns questions that challenge you to understand more of life, such as how is it possible that people hurt each other? How is it possible that I can have such a great experience that everything and everyone is okay when I ride my bike to work and see the sun rise and hear the birds chirping? So it is about questions that make you consciously realize that everything is not so common at all, but that it is special and grand, much larger than you are. Questions that arise above your personal life. These kinds of questions can come up at any time, during a walk along the beach or in a forest, or in a good conversation with friends or fellow students. And you can imagine many more moments for yourself. Because if you do not ask these kinds of questions yourself, you would not be here today. Such a moment of wonder can come unexpectedly. The astronauts' view on Earth in the video was not planned. They were on their way to the moon. Their focus lay there. But during their journey, they looked behind them, and unexpectedly they were so overwhelmed by the image of the Earth that they directed the camera in the other direction to give this image also to other people. You can also deliberately search for these kinds of moments and questions, for example, by organizing a study group and exchanging questions that you have, or by going to a symposium on life wisdom. By asking yourself questions, the next phase automatically comes into sight, the phase of researching, allowing you to find possible answers to your questions.
In the investigation phase, you will critically think about potential answers. You will philosophize about them. You can do this in a structured way by formulating a possible answer to check your question, by making an assumption, and subsequently check whether that answer is correct. In science, this is called defining and testing a hypothesis. You can formulate hypotheses yourself, but you can also use what has already been defined by others. Theosophy, for example, provides 3 hypotheses that can be investigated by everyone. These are the 3 key principles for wisdom that have been mentioned a few times already. There is boundlessness, cyclicity, and growth and fundamental equality. We state today that with these principles, you can actually answer all of life's questions. This investigation we will actually do together today, first in a plenary exercise before lunch, and in smaller groups during the workshops this afternoon. Once you have provided an answer to your life questions, the best answer you have been able to find at this moment, then it is key to live according to that answer consistently. If you were to wait until you have acquired insight in everything, then you would never act accordingly because you can grow forever. If the found answer to my question, why do people hurt each other, is because they are ignorant and do not know how they can live together in harmony and in love, then for me, the consistent application of that answer concerns spreading knowledge on how you can do that. Hence also the decision to cooperate in the organization of the symposium. This phase emerges clearly in the formulated definition of life wisdom, the dynamic process in which we learn to consistently apply wisdom in all life conditions. Through wondering, investigating, and consistently applying in all conditions of life, we develop the ability to see and experience the true coherence and regularity of all things, and we are increasingly becoming wiser. And as indicated earlier, becoming wiser is an infinite process, so you can keep wondering forever and continue to nurture the wisdom acquired in this life from an inexhaustible source. I will come back to this when we talk about where wisdom can be found. Becoming wiser is therefore a process, a continuous, infinite, cyclic learning process. A process that every time starts with wonderment. making you ask questions about life and search for answers,
en naar die antwoorden op zoek gaan.
through which you can gain insights into the coherence of life and also start living according to those acquired insights,
Inzichten zelf gaat leven.
enabling you to grow with these new experiences and insights.
Kun je dan weer verder groeien.
This process, this learning, means that you move from what you know, the known, to the unknown, that you are open to new, different thoughts,
Staat voor nieuwe, andere gedachten.
in which you not only learn to think differently, but gradually also learn to think more independently.
Steeds zelfstandiger.
You learn to give answers to life questions more independently and live according to them. I think that it has become clear by now that wisdom is always relative if you assume that it is boundless, and also that the aforementioned phases do not always consistently follow each other, but can be shuffled for all kinds of questions.
Allerlei vragen dwars door elkaar heen lopen.
Now that we have talked about how you can become wiser, we will continue with the part where wisdom can be found.
Waar wijsheid te vinden is.
To start again with a short answer,
Met het korte antwoord.
wisdom can be found in ourselves, and our search for it leads to the infinite source of universal wisdom.
Leidt naar de oneindige bron van universele wijsheid.
We can develop ourselves because we, as humans, are composite beings, and all the wisdom that we can develop is potentially already present within us.
In ons aanwezig is.
As we further develop, we can acquire more and more wisdom. You can compare this with successive classes at school.
Opeenvolgende klassen op school.
There is also a hierarchy of wisdom, shaped by wiser and less wise forms of thinking, as well as wiser and less wise beings.
En meer en minder wijze wezens.
The key concepts in this answer are universal wisdom, the composite constitution of man, and hierarchy of wisdom. More about that now.
Daarover nu weer wat meer.
The universal wisdom that we need to solve problems in life can be found within us.
Problemen op te lossen in dit leven is dus in onszelf.
And assuming boundlessness, we even have a boundless potential for wisdom within us, so that we can continue to learn infinitely. We are that boundlessness, and the wisdom is free and accessible to everyone.
is vrij en toegankelijk voor iedereen.
The universal wisdom is also the source for all wisdom traditions. For all wisdom traditions originate from a messenger who has found, developed, and spread more of this inner wisdom.
Ontwikkeld heeft en heeft
The same core of this wisdom can be still found in all traditions.
de kern van deze wijsheid ook nog terug te vinden.
It is important to be able to distinguish universal wisdom from the level of wisdom of the human being who applies it and how much that person understands. There is no universal wisdom then, just personal wisdom.
Maar van persoonlijke wijsheid.
This distinction is discussed in more detail in the second key concept of the answer to the question, where can more wisdom be found? And this concerns the composite constitution of man. A human being is not only what we can perceive of him with our eyes. There's a force
Achter die uiterlijke
working behind the outer man human being. As human beings, we are composed of a temporary part, the body, the part which our eyes can perceive, a learning part, the soul,
lerendeel
and an eternal part, the spirit,
en een eeuwig
the force behind man.
de kracht achter de mens.
The learning part connects the eternal part, where all knowledge can be found, with the temporary part. In the course of its incarnations, the learning part is able to express a growing portion of the spirit's inner wisdom in the physical, temporary part.
Lichamelijke tijdelijke deel.
This learning part, this soul, can focus its mind upwards or downwards.
Naar boven of naar beneden.
If the soul aims its mind upwards, towards the eternal part, it becomes impersonal.
Dan is er sprake van boven
When doing so, you live in the notion of interconnectedness and unity.
eenheid.
If the learning part aims its mind downwards,
Naar beneden
or identifies with the impermanent, temporary part, then we speak of personal consciousness. You are then living more from the assumption of being disconnected from other people, from the assumption of separateness. As human beings, we see and explain differently because each of one of us is in another phase of development. One human soul has already learned more than another and can express already more of the inner wisdom. Furthermore, every human being can identify himself at any given moment with another part in this composite constitution. This is related to what we mentioned earlier about the soul aiming upwards or downwards. So one moment a person may be fully focused on the personal, temporary part, only assigning value to that part. Then this person will tend to see his own personal thoughts as the only right ones. He could even become emotional when someone else refuses to accept his truth. Could even start to feel worried about the other person, wondering whether that other person is on the right path. Whenever someone turns his mind more towards the impersonal, to the higher, wiser and eternal part, and identifies himself with it, he will try to listen to what someone else thinks, asking questions until he understands the other person's views. Such a person will try hard to jointly develop a clear view that is shared by more people. He also realizes that in the future these views will be adjusted if necessary when more insight is obtained. It is exactly our identification with the personal or impersonal part in us that will color all our thoughts. It colors the interpretation of our perceptions, the interpretation of our experiences, as well as our knowledge and the insights we gained. This identification, by the way, may fluctuate in one and the same person during the day, depending on his moods. So the answer to the question, where can we find wisdom, is in that part of us that identifies itself with the large totality of which we are a part.
By focusing on the higher qualities in us, we can reach our own inner wisdom. So we can become wiser by a stronger focus on our eternal part. This act of focusing the mind you can only do yourself. Another person cannot do it for you. And you can only do it during your life in a temporary body. Therefore, after in the period between two lives, you will digest all the higher insights you gained during that life, similarly to your experiences of the day which you digest during your sleep. Just as you eat and drink each day to feed your physical body, you will have to take in spiritual food to grow in insight and wisdom. We all know how to prepare a meal for the physical body, but how do you prepare food for the eternal source in such a way that it becomes digestible for the learning soul? How do you gather ingredients that you cannot see, hear, taste, smell, or feel? And according to which recipe do you combine them into a healthy meal for the learning soul? As the senses are suited for the meals for the body, there are similar possibilities for that spiritual food. As a matter of fact, we utilize them by learning to recognize the higher aspects in ourselves, which we can focus on to let wisdom awaken ourselves. We utilize them by structuring our thinking and building up a vision. We utilize them by continually thinking in line with the unity of life, the equality of all people, the fact that each living being is an expression of the one living principle. By realizing that there is still so much left to learn, by realizing that we all are learning entities, able to assist each other during that learning process, starting with the simple recognition that we are learning and not yet perfect. And we utilize them above all by developing an ever clearer view and testing this view as well, how that one life manifests itself in all living beings. The clearer our own view is, the better we can put that view on life into words, and the better we can convey that view again to other people. So people differ in insight. These differences express themselves, for instance, in the questions we ask and the explanations we find for the phenomena that we perceive. Let's give you an example. Nowadays, everybody may get acquainted with the pictures of space in documentaries and on the internet. We see how awesome it is to observe the sun not surrounded by a blue sky, but by a black sky because the picture is taken outside the Earth's atmosphere. Then we see the sun just as we, looking from the Earth, see other stars at night. So, the sun is just a part of the rest of the universe. Something we already know intellectually, of course, because we learnt it at our schools. Many documentaries that show us such astonishing pictures have been made. So nowadays, we're able to see that the planet Earth floats in space. We can also observe ourselves how thin the atmosphere, in fact, is. This atmosphere makes all life on our planet possible, a kind of skin of the living entity Earth. Seeing this thin layer has already made many people realize how vulnerable our Earth actually is, and how large our responsibility is to treat our Earth, which makes all manifested life on it possible, with care. These same observations described above give rise to various questions and explanations. So, one person may look for the explanation in the intellectual field, in natural science, by asking himself, how do the things I see function? Another person would be inclined to ask philosophical questions like, why does it work that way? And again, others will raise the question, what is the final purpose of this? Which will lead to more spiritual insights. These various questions and explanations lead to different views and conclusions about the acts and activities that express these views when we apply them in practice. Human beings differ in insight and in what they express through the learning soul in our visible physical world. As said earlier, all wisdom is available in the spirit of man. All insights are already present. These insights in yourself need only to be awakened and clearly passed on to the learning soul. In this respect, you may speak of a hierarchy of understanding and applying insight and wisdom. This hierarchy is built up as follows. From intellectual analysis, as for instance 1 + 1 = 2, thinking and mathematical formulas, knowledge on how something functions, to comprehension why something is what it is, the more philosophical insights, to the notion of the purpose of things, the spiritual insights. Life wisdom consists of a synthesis of these three approaches. By turning your mind to that higher wisdom in yourself, your inner spirit, the top in that hierarchy, you will resonate with the universal laws, and you will learn ever more quickly. By maintaining an open attitude of wonderment, enabling you to investigate the questions of life without any prejudice and to live in line with the answers you found, you will continually become relatively wiser. As a logical consequence, you will become ever more connected to the hierarchy of beings who are much further in their development. This universal wisdom has been expressed already many times in human words. The Buddha, for instance, gave us ideas that already for thousands of years have helped us to become wiser. And H.P. Blavatsky has formed the Theosophical Society and provided it with many ideas, which are studied now worldwide for already more than 140 years.
Be aware that all information that we give to you today brings along certain consequences. Knowing that there is a process to become wiser will logically lead you to set your steps upon that path to follow the process that leads to wisdom. Staying passive or awaiting keeps the present world as it is. An active attitude is indispensable. Also, when your personality protests now and then by feeling or uncertainty or fear or sticking to old patterns or thought. Something that may likely happen. Actually, growing wiser also means letting go of everything you formerly held onto in your thoughts. It is learning to think from another perspective, from the impersonal perspective, that is founded on boundlessness, cyclicity, and growth and fundamental equality. And that is different from what most of us have got used to in daily life. You now know that you can contribute to the realization of your ideal world by study and investigation, and by learning to live your view, to live your thoughts, by learning to transform them into acts. What do you do with wisdom? Are you a stimulus, source of inspiration for your surroundings? It is important what you do with the insight you gained. The point is, you can try to get wisdom only for the spiritual growth of yourself or for the spiritual well-being of everybody. This choice concerns not only your acts, but also your thoughts. The way you think determines the way you stand in life. Thinking from the personality colors your life entirely different compared to thinking from the impersonality. For instance, if you gather in a few minutes from now with some people in a workshop, your attention can be primarily drawn to the appearance of them. How could that person choose these clothes? Such colors don't match at all. while those of that other person combine very nicely. But if you pay attention to more inner aspects, you may notice how well everyone works together, or that some people did not yet understand each other, so that some extra informing questions are needed. Or your thoughts add to the mental sphere that we are creating together. With our thoughts, we sow seeds in other people, and that comes with responsibility. So thoughts are not toll-free. Everyone around us may pick up our thoughts and get affected by them. You can feed a mental sphere by what you think and by the ideas you advertise. Strong thinkers may exert a really great influence this way. We influence flows of thought day after day. Today, during this symposium, we make an effort to share and clarify thoughts that can help us all to become what we essentially are. But influencing flows of thought, we also do at our jobs and at home. We do it by giving the colleague who, for the 100th time, starts to grumble about the train delays, a positive thought that may change the whole sphere of his day. Perhaps also by pouring in a cup of coffee for him, which may give him a moment of wonderment that gives him more room in his thinking for new thoughts and insights. So it is important to try very consciously to change your thinking, focusing on the higher qualities in yourself, directing your attention to the inner wisdom that can be found in yourself, and then making it your guiding principle. It is all about character improvement. Look at reality from the freshly gained wisdom and let go of your old images. Make that impersonal view the basis of your daily life. By doing this, you can awaken your inner wisdom from the spirit in your learning soul and can learn to express this wisdom in practice, manifesting it in the physical world in which we live. You then increase to express the boundless potential you have in you. To summarize the whole story, the main question in this lecture was, how do you become a wise living being? The summarized answer to this is, by actively drawing upon the source of boundless knowledge. By learning during the active phase of the life cycle and act more and more accordingly. And while doing so, realizing growth and fundamental equality by manifesting it yourself for all that lives. And about the learning process in the active phase, we indicated that it consists of wondering, investigating, consistent application in all life conditions, and the gaining of increased insight, which means becoming wiser.
Thank you, ladies, for the wise words.